Hello and welcome. Tonight we're going to be talking about discourse on the internet and how it can be tiresome at times for many reasons. We've discussed in the past a number of different ways that this can happen, from the various barriers that can happen through language, even if you are speaking the same language, the various levels of education that someone might have had or understanding of a particular topic, private language, in-group bias, cognitive bias, and all sorts. But tonight we are going to broach the subject from a different angle. Many things on our lives, especially on the internet, have been gamified in some way. Music review sites, for example, encourage reviewing with experience and rewards, and ordering a pizza earns you free slices. Going to your grocery shop or ordering your groceries online gives you points and coupons, which can give you discounts elsewhere and give you more power. And it seems that atheism itself has been gamified too. You want to know how? Well, stick around. So hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave.
And it's been a while since we've been streaming. I do apologise for that. I actually managed to get out of the country and have a brief week away. It wasn't long enough and it was more tiring than being at home, but it was absolutely wonderful. I really enjoyed every minute of it, possibly too much. When I found out that they had Jim Beam on the all-inclusive plan, it was like, hey. Obviously, I didn't get too smashed. I did have kids, but it was, it was just like, oh, yeah, you can go to the disco, girls. You can go to the disco. That's showing through up as green. That shouldn't be green. Sorry. So I'm just looking at something over on the other screen, and it's not appearing correctly. But yes, it was like, yeah, girls, go on, let's go to the nighttime disco, and the bar people loved me because apparently I was the only person that tipped. So they just started pouring me really, really, really large measures. But anyway, Dave, it's been a while since we've had a proper chat as well. So how are you?
I'm not too bad. Had a bit of a health thing at the beginning of the week, but seems to have passed again now. So.
Well, that's excellent. I'm glad that you are feeling a bit better, and that we can do this topic as well. And hopefully you will continue to go from strength to strength as well.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like me.
We'll have you running by next year.
I'm already walking 3 miles a day. Look, I've even lost weight.
Oh, good on you, mate. I thought you just shaved.
No, that helps too. But yeah, I've lost about a stone, I think.
Ah, good on you. It's, difficult at the best of times, though, isn't it?
New dog. So.
Yes, the new pup.
Walk her 3 times a day.
How's she doing?
Really good.
Yeah?
She's a very affectionate puppy.
Oh,
who
wonderful.
hates cats with a passion.
Good. Good with people, though?
Yeah, brilliant with people. She loves everybody. She has a bad habit of going up to strangers and just like jumping on them and like saying, "Pet me, pet me, pet me."
But other than that, all good.
Yeah, definitely. Got an assignment coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah,
and I'll be away. I won't be able to do a Thursday stream on the week of the 5th.
Week of the 5th, okay.
Because I'm house sitting and dog sitting for my sister.
Okay.
She's taking the grandkids to Lapland to see Santa.
Yeah, fair. That's no, that's fine. I think I've got a few spotty days coming up. We might have to either consider doing other days or just accept that we're going to have a few days off. And your assignments and everything like that. How's that all been going?
Pretty good. I haven't studied for about a week and a half or 2 weeks. I've been kind of lazy in that respect. But I can normally do a week's worth of study in a day or two, so it's fine.
Yeah, fair. And our wonderful audience. It's nice to see so many of you here right at the start. We didn't expect anyone to remember us after being off for so long, so it is nice to see so many of you here. So thank you very much, all of you. How have you all been? What have I missed in the internet world? You know, I'm terrible at keeping up with everything anyway. I did manage to find out that they've let Trump back into Twitter, and no one cares really.
Yeah, you know the amusing thing about that?
What?
He's not even allowed back on Twitter because he's got like a sole contract to his Truth Social. So he's not actually allowed back on Twitter because of his contract with Truth Social, as far as I know.
Brilliant.
So it was all just pomp and ceremony to make Elon Musk look like the savior of the alt-right.
Fantastic. Even better. And obviously, ladies and gentlemen, obviously we've been off for a couple of weeks, and every time we go offline, weird things seem to happen to things like sound levels and everything like that. So please let us know if there are any problems on the airwaves. I'm looking at my mic levels, and they look like they're coming through much hotter than they used to. But let me know if it sounds particularly awful, and I'll have a quick look at things. If not, I'll take that offline and try and get it sorted for the next stream. Hopefully it's not too painful and I'm not sounding like I'm shouting any more than I usually do with my overly booming voice. But anyway, it's nice to have a catch up. But we are here for a particular reason, and that reason is to talk about the gamification of atheism. Now, Dave and I are both atheists ourselves. I know those of you in the chat all know that, and those of you in the chat know that when we say atheist, we mean we believe gods don't exist. We accept that it's true that gods don't exist. But there are other definitions of atheism, and we will be covering off all sorts of atheists within this. We're not saying that you can't use atheism a certain way. We have our preference, we have our justifications for our preference, but this particular topic will cover all sorts of atheism and the gamification of it. Now, Dave, would you like to take it away and let us know sort of what inspired you to address this topic in the first place?
Yep. So I came across a philosopher called, I'm going to butcher his name now because it's a Vietnamese name, but it's C.T. Nguyen. I can't really find anyone who pronounces his name, and the only person I found pronounced it like that and said, I probably butchered your name, so I'm going to say I probably butchered his name too. And he talks about the seduction of clarity and the gamification of social media, or discourse on social media, and basically how it's damaging to quality discussion, quality debate, quality discourse, because you're narrowing it down to this kind of really narrow field. So it's all about numbers. It's not about giving the best argument. It's about getting the most likes, getting the most shares. I mean, one of the popular things you hear is, oh, that post got ratioed. Doesn't matter whether they made a good argument. What matters is the ratings. And so I kind of when I was watching it, I could kind of relate a lot of what he was saying to what I see in the atheist community on social media. And I thought it might be interesting to discuss some of the things that we see in there. Like, here's a pretty basic example. Now, in gaming, it's all about the points, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But also in some, it's about the leveling up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you think about a lot of content creators, they want to get bigger and bigger. They want to be not the top creator, because let's face it, nobody's going to be Matt Dillahunty, nobody's going to be Aaron Ra, but they want to get bigger and bigger. They want to get that bigger audience. And the only way to do that is to have those that are bigger than you promote you.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that those bigger than you will promote you is if you're saying the right things or already getting popular. And the only way to get popular and level up is to say the right things. And by that, the beliefs can be manipulated. They can manipulate the discourse by saying, this is what you must say. So it's not about the quality of the discussion. It's about enforcing the rules and playing by those rules, just like any game.
Yeah, and I suppose we can say, I mean, if we talk about a particular social media platform, I mean, this could relate to any of them in particular. But if you think about, say Twitter, you've got your likes and you've got your retweets, and they're almost like, you know, a like is pretty good, but a retweet, or a quote tweet, you know, whoa, that's even better. And then, you know, how many comments come off of it and how many different trees and all of that sort of stuff. And as you say, like if you've responded to someone and you've got more likes than the original post and more retweets than the original post, yeah, it's called, you know, oh, that post got ratioed. And sometimes it's not necessarily anything particularly great that someone has responded with, is it? It can sometimes be that
you can't prove a negative.
Yeah, or something
and that'll
like
get you hundreds of likes. Yeah. And the person who says, actually, you can, here's the thing in logic, that will get a lot of comments telling you you're wrong, but it won't get you any likes. And then the ones who get the likes get promoted because they've scored the most.
They level up, ding, and all of a sudden, with all of that comes more followers, and with more followers becomes more opportunity.
Exactly. And I mean, how many times have we heard, like, they can't be a very good atheist channel, like speaking about us.
Oh, yeah.
To another person with a bald, shiny head that we know. You know who I mean.
I mean, there's lots of people that could relate to.
He's a badly spelt infidel.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right, yeah. The one that sort of looks like that clown.
Yeah, basically. Well, when we were arguing with him, people were saying, well, he must be the better one because he's got thousands of likes, and you must not be a very good channel and not know very much because you don't have that many followers. And all it takes in the atheist community to get followers is to just say you're an atheist channel, but that's not true, as we know, because we don't play by those slogans and by those rules, and therefore we don't get people on our team. People want to be on the bigger team. They want to be on the team that appears to be winning, so that, you know, it all starts to get gamified in that way. Yeah,
because we do our best not to play the game. We might get absorbed into some of the behaviors at times, especially when frustrated. But we try not to play the game. We try not to say the things that will get one popular. We try to say the right thing, even if it's going to end up with being ignored, because it's a little bit of integrity, just a little bit. Now, there's a point that's come through from Aflamo here. It says you can get the big guys to promote you by attacking you too. And I think that's right. If you say the wrong enough thing, so I think the problem that a channel like us has is the fact that we're not saying the wrong enough thing to have enough of the other atheist channels care about us enough to say to come and attack us, right? We're not saying, well, we can prove gods exist. There you go. We're not saying, oh yeah, the world's only 6,000 years old or anything like that. We believe gods don't exist, and they'll hear that and they'll go, well, yeah, they're just stupid for thinking that, or something like that. So we're not necessarily saying anything against them. And if they were to actually put out some of our stuff where we were correcting poor logic and the like from other atheists, it would only reflect badly on them. So they probably don't do that. It's probably safer for them to ignore us, because if they ignore us, nothing happens.
Well, I mean, we have had it where we've jumped into a debate where a bigger content creator or a bigger Twitter user has said something, and they will quote tweet what we say, mock us, and this is something that comes in a little bit later that I'll talk about. But they'll mock us, and then their followers will come to us to attack us.
Yeah.
Turning it into like this game where go and scare them away. I've taken some notes because Ben mentions echo chambers, and that there is a thing, and it's a really good point. This is because of kind of echo chambers. Now, T breaks up two things here. Now, in social media, you can have an echo chamber or a filter bubble.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people exist in filter bubbles where they're just not hearing the other side. All the people they speak to, all the people they follow, they all tend to have sort of similar beliefs, but it's not quite the same as an echo chamber.
No, a filter bubble is closer to what we talk about when we speak about epistemic bubbles.
Yeah, exactly. But the way he puts echo chambers is echo chambers are structures where those inside are taught to distrust outsiders. And an outsider is anyone that doesn't share your core beliefs. And that's what a lot of atheists that have this sort of gamification thing going on within atheism are in. Because how many times do you see when you correct another atheist, you will immediately be called a theist?
Yeah, most definitely.
You don't share their core beliefs, so therefore you must not be an atheist.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you see what I mean? And that's an echo chamber. And how often do you get blocked for continuing to argue with them? Even some of the bigger Twitter users have blocked us for correcting them after sending their fans after us. So they're creating that kind of echo chamber, and they're turning it into this game.
And something to add to the quote tweet game that you're talking about there. Generally, when they do it, they take one tweet that's out of context and they misrepresent it and get their followers to go after it as well. So they completely misrepresent what you're saying. And generally, their followers won't listen to you if you say that's not actually what I said. But in one instance, I did actually say, this is a complete misrepresentation of what I said. And one of them turned around and went and said, oh, no, I've just gone back through and had a look. And yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I understand. It's not exactly how I think about it, but yeah, that's fair enough. But that's only ever happened once in all the times that I've been quote tweeted and misrepresented. Every other time, it has been a case of just this dog pile of people and meme bombs and, yeah.
And I think what you can take from that is the difference between somebody that exists in a filter bubble, because that person went back and he looked and they checked, and even though it went against what they believed, they took it on. But those stuck in the echo chambers will go back and go, that's against my core belief. That man's an outsider. I can't trust what he's saying. He's not on my team in this game. Therefore, he's the person I'm supposed to be competing against.
Yeah. It's a good distinction, really. And it's something that I don't think really is something that people consider. I know that I would have, before watching that thing you sent me the other day, I'd have probably just grouped it all under echo chamber.
I did before, yeah. It was a very useful distinction for me as well.
Yeah. So if anyone else out there is wondering, there is a useful distinction between an echo chamber and a filter bubble. It's not always the same thing. just catching up with the chat quickly. I'll read out that thing that you said from Ben. He said, it's a form of tribalism that often manifests within this kind of echo chamber reinforcing gamification. It's the source of some behaviors where the atheist gets accused of being religious, which is what we were just discussing, and that happens quite a lot.
Well, here's another thing to add to that, is that T mentions that these kind of echo chambers can also take on kind of cult-like structures.
Very much so.
And yeah, so you have these people that can't be criticized because they're at the top of the cult. You think about what happens when you criticize Matt Dillahunty or you criticize some of the more common slogans. And they go after you. And things can't be questioned. You're blocked out. You're attacked. So I can see that as well. I mean, that it starts to take on this shape of a cult, even if those people don't see it. But most people inside a cult don't think they're in a cult.
Yeah,
they think everybody else is.
Yeah. Same with the conspiracy. Everyone who doesn't agree with the conspiracy is part of the problem. I think it's just the way humans are wired, isn't it, really, unfortunately?
Yeah. And there's another good thing that's mentioned here by T, is that inside those kind of structures, you also have preempted kind of attacks and defenses. So in like a conspiracy theory type thing, you'll have the guy at the head of the conspiracy theory saying, well, what I'm saying is right, and it's so right, those people are out to get me. And if you go out and look, they'll attack me all the time, even though I'm right.
Remember that bit.
And so they preempt those criticisms, and now think about some of the arguments we've heard from within the atheist community where it's, well, you can't trust that dictionary because that dictionary was owned by a religious person. Do you see what I mean? And you think about the American atheists, they do it themselves by saying these previous dictionaries were tainted by religious beliefs in the culture at the time. But that's not what atheism is. Atheism is what we say it is and only what we say it is.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, there was even that one, that author guy, Roman or whatever, who went off with his old conspiracy theory that all dictionaries were bought by religious people in the 80s to change the definition of atheism.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So, you can see that sort of structure going on within certain parts of atheism, who are turning it into this game where this is my team. These are the rules you play by. If you don't play by these rules, you're one of them.
Yeah.
You're the enemy. Yeah.
So he also says, what you're describing are either misrepresentation happened to Ben Watkins with the Twitter page Things Atheists Say. They piled onto a point he showed was philosophically grounded. Guilt everywhere. Yeah. You actually heard people say that kind of nonsense. Yes, Ben. I think I may have even quoted him in an article. I probably blanked out his name. No, in fact, where we do blank out most people, anyone that has a certain level of following and followers, we feel that there's a responsibility to let people know that they are doing certain things. And with that particular person, I think it was Roman Piso or something like that, wasn't it, Dave? And if you look at the article, there can be only one or something like that on Answers in Reason, or it's one of the English language barrier ones or something. I think it's the Highlander one. It was the Highlander fallacy one, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm sure it was that one. Anyway, it doesn't matter which one it was, but yeah, I'll have a look on the site later for you, Ben, and send you a link over. It genuinely thinks that loads of crazy things, loads of conspiracies. And it was my fault that I didn't agree with him because I was tainted by religious thinking. In fact, anyone that didn't agree with him was tainted by religious thinking. That was his thing. If you don't agree with him, you're tainted by religious thinking, which ties back into, again, everything that's just been said. There was one other question that I saw come in earlier, but really weird. I saw it come in and now I can't see it at all. It was from Kimmo. But something about reading something, and then I can't see it on my chat screen anymore. Never mind. Doesn't matter. Sorry. Say it again if you want, Kimmo. If not, we'll move on. And yes, you're right, Ben. It is just embarrassing that, well, for anyone to genuinely think that. I find, though, when you're holding such a ridiculous belief as that sort of thing, it goes of two ways. And either the person does finally realize that they have a faulty belief and swallows their pride and admits it and admits that they were wrong. Or what tends to be more likely is that they start doubting it and they double down and start doing their best to convince other people of it, because they think if they can get enough people to believe it, then it must be true. They almost create their own ad populum. And I've noticed this a lot with other conspiracies, like when people are starting to doubt their positions, perhaps as anti-vaxxers or something like that. I've noticed some when they've started hearing more and more rationalizations for why their position is wrong and seeing more evidence for what's going on, and they then double down. And even though they're not actively being attacked by the directly, because all of this additional information is around there, they're suddenly pushing their position harder. So yeah, it's like they're hitting a boss wave.
Yeah, that happens. Like you can sort of see that when you have an argument with another atheist and they start to lose, you'll get other atheists coming in trying to carry on the game, trying to beat you as the boss, kind of thing. And so another way we can think of atheism as being gamified is, what does a game do? It offers you pleasure for playing by the rules, for winning and beating your opponent, and all that really matters is winning. Mm-hmm. In a lot of cases, there are games where it matters how you play the game. Those are some of the best RPGs. Mm-hmm. But when you think of a lot of games, it's just point scoring. It's getting to in a racing game, you got to cross the finish line as quickly as possible, that kind of thing. And you get pleasure from it. Mm-hmm. So if you think about a lot of atheist debates, that's all that matters is the winning. Mm-hmm. They get pleasure from winning. They get pleasure from bragging that they knocked down another theist or they put somebody else in their place. And so that's a good way to manipulate beliefs. If you get somebody to feel pleasure from winning these things, and the only thing that counts is winning, you can then start to offer them this structure of an argument that doesn't allow them to be lost. Now, you think about some of these. Burden of proof is only on the theist. I don't have to make an argument. And if the theist can't convince you, then you've won. So you can manipulate that belief about the burden of proof, because how often do you see other atheists get frustrated when you say, well, actually, you do have to make your case. They lose their shit. Like literally, some of them will lose their shit. And how many of the bigger names do you see promoting that? Randolph Richardson does. Matt Dillahunty is popular for it. Nope, atheists don't have a burden of proof at all, in any way. The burden of proof is only on the theist. So
and that's because, as we've discussed in the past, just to call it back, is they're using the wrong burden of proof. For one, they're using the legal burden of proof, and they're sort of misrepresenting the legal burden of proof too. So, so not only are they using the wrong burden of proof for a discussion, or even admitting the fact that the burden of proof doesn't apply to just a general conversation. They're using the legal burden of proof and using it incorrectly. And so this is all part of the game that Dave's talking about. They've manipulated one of the rules so that you can only win this game as an atheist.
And therefore get constant pleasure. And another one, the big one, atheism is only a lack of belief. How often is that? I'm not making any claims. I don't have to put forward a position. It's up to you to put forward the position and for me to agree with it. I don't agree with it, therefore I have won the game.
Mm-hmm.
And how many atheists lose their shit when you suggest that there's more than one definition of atheism?
Yeah, clearly a theist.
Yeah. And that's one of the things in a game. You want to simplify everything as much as possible. And in a game, you want quantitative things, not qualitative things. It's not about the quality of the argument. It's about the number of times you can win using that argument.
Much like someone that meme bombs.
Yes, exactly. I've dropped this meme, I won. Or you think about fallacy bingo. Straw man, I've won. But no, because that wasn't a straw man. That was just an argument. Or, ad hominem. No, I was just making fun of you. But they think they go away leaving that argument feeling as if they've won and getting pleasure from showing the other side how smart they are. See what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
And when you simplify them that much and it gets them that much pleasure, they don't want to leave that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're stuck in that, and then they get stuck in the echo chamber, and then they can be manipulated even further. And one of the ways to get people on board and manipulate them is to give them not deep arguments, not sort of very... Like, when you think about things, most things in life aren't simple black and white things.
Agreed.
There's a certain level of depth, but if you can just give people slogans that make them feel good and allow them to win arguments that make them feel good,
mm-hmm.
they're more likely to take that on board and have their beliefs manipulated. So we can see this happening from some of the bigger names in the atheist community because they throw out all these slogans.
Yeah. So it really does sound like, the gamification of atheism actually sounds like a better descriptor than a lot of the things that we've tried comparing it to historically. I'm not saying that the things that we've said historically don't work. They do. They're still very relevant. But the fact of the matter is this gamification actually probably describes all of the little features that we've discussed and brings it together as an overall descriptor. Because it's got the fact that you've got these rules. It's got the fact that you've got this cheat mode where you're changing the rules. It's got the fact that you're trying to win. You've got you score points. You've got the indefeasible positions and so on and so forth. God mode, if you will. Actually, that works really well. That wasn't intentional at all. But yeah. So the question is, how do you break someone out of their game?
That's pretty difficult to do, I would think, because they've got to care less about the pleasure and the winning and the scoring of the points and the actual quality of the arguments. And you see, this is one of the things that a belief manipulator has. You'll probably remember this from when you watched it, but the term maximally brain delicious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually, I think, the point where I really got engaged.
Yeah, it's such a brilliant term. Because somebody who actually cares about the quality of their argument and cares about the truth is bound by the truth and bound by giving good arguments. Whereas somebody who's only out to create these rules of the game and to get people to do their bidding only has to care about making the thing maximally brain delicious, make it as pleasurable as possible, as addictive as possible, as kind of tasty as possible. So they don't have to care about the truth. They don't have to care that there is more than one definition of atheism. They only have to care about whether they can snag people into their game.
Yeah. So we're still stuck in the same issue that we've had with other discussions, is the fact that we're probably never going to get people to even realize that they're playing a game.
And being manipulated by the people writing the rules of those games. And I suppose one way you could think about it is one of the slogans that atheists promote. I guess you have to kind of go for the slogans. I want to believe as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible. That's one put out by somebody who I could argue that manipulates the game and writes the rules. So if that is the case, if that is one of the rules, well, then that contradicts with this rule that says X. There is only one definition of atheism. Well, that's not true. And if you care about A over here believing as many true things as possible, then just winning the game shouldn't be the goal. It should be the truth. I suppose that's one way of pulling them out. But then, if it's that delicious and that addictive and gives them that much pleasure, I mean, you come home from a day of work, you're frustrated, you're angry, a bit bored, go on Twitter and show the theists who's the boss. Makes you feel good for a little bit. And you can do it on the phone on your way home if you're on the bus or the subway. De-stress before you actually get in from work. That makes it more addictive.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're completely honest, I'm sure there's times when we have very much done that thing ourselves. But yeah. Coming back to the chat briefly, right, you've got... Oh, so Mark says, should you play to the death?
I mean, considering some of the people in the atheist community who say that theists should be locked in zoos, I think some of them are willing to play to the death.
Yeah, but would they be willing to play to their own? See, the thing is, they've got God mode on.
They're willing to hand out certificates to people in other countries so that they can be put to death, so long as they get their money for playing the game first.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Have you guys heard about this? What's his name from the Atheist Alliance International?
I can't remember what his name was.
No, but basically...
Bill Flavell.
Ah, nice one. Basically created these certificates that for a small fee you can have to prove that you're an atheist, and so therefore you don't have to pay anything to your church if you're in a church state, and you're not bound by Sharia law and all of that. And it's just like, have you even thought this through? In countries where you're in an Islamic state, do you know what they do to atheists? Yeah, they kill them, right? And we're not saying that this is all Muslims and that's what all Muslims believe at all. No. But we're talking in these very strict Islamic states, these ones where people would want to be free of their religion and prove that they're atheists, perhaps, but not in that state. They want to leave that. Giving them a certificate so that they get extra atheist points.
And again, there you go. It's sort of, this proves you're on my team. Do you see what I mean? This bolsters our numbers on our team. And the whole team thing is also a good explanation for why You're either theist or you're an atheist. There is no other side.
Because most team games are played with two people, or at least at the same time, even when you're looking at, like a game of football or anything like that, two teams are playing at a time. There could be other teams that come and go, but that's not how it happens to these people within the atheist-theist debate, because that's all there is. It's atheists versus theists. And if you're not a theist, you're some form of atheist. And if you're not an atheist, you must be a theist.
And if you're an atheist, you must abide by these slogans, these rules. Even though, there is no commandments in atheism, you try going against some of those slogans and some of those rules, and you'll soon find that these are very much the rules of the game in a lot of the atheist community.
Oh my God, you say you can prove a negative? You must be a theist. Well, actually, you can't prove a negative is a theist argument that you're just repeating and have adopted as an atheist argument. And actually, you can prove some negatives. So I don't understand. I don't understand why atheists are using theist arguments.
They don't realize they are. They think it's a get out of jail free card because, you asked me to disprove God. Well, atheists only lack a belief. And besides which, you build on those judo throws more and more. So you already have these defenses for when somebody brings something up. Doesn't matter whether those defenses are correct, well thought out, as long as you have the slogan to throw out.
Yeah, because I suppose when you're in a situation where none of it is actually mediated or anything like that, there is no way for someone objective, like someone moderating a debate, to say, well, actually that doesn't work, or they're not keeping score, so you think that you've won, and within a general conversation, that's all you really have. You're keeping score yourself, and that's another problem with this game, because everyone is keeping score themselves. It's not actually in something like a formal debate where you would have a moderator and things like that.
Well, there is a score being kept to some degree that we mentioned earlier.
Within the likes and all of that, and ratioing things, and and there is that, but then all of that is predicated on a massive in-group bias.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But they don't think it is, because, the atheists are the smart, rational one who only believe things on evidence. So, you frozen? Oh, no, okay. Sorry, yeah. But because they believe that they're rational, they're logical, they believe things based on evidence, they don't accept things without evidence. Therefore, if I've gotten lots of likes from an atheist, then they must be unbiased, because atheists take things on rationality and logic, not on feelings.
Yeah, I know they feel that's true. Kimmo brings up the paradox of games. They're only fun if you take them seriously, but if you take them seriously, they stop being games.
You're not playing a game, yeah.
Ben's got a question. Do you think the urge or drive is going away? And if not, then is it pertinent to redirect it in better channeled and manifesting ways?
I think for some it is, because we're seeing some other atheist content pop up now where, yes, they're criticizing religion, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I think criticizing religion is good, because there is harms that religion causes.
Yeah.
But they're actually caring about the quality of the argument. There is still a lot of mocking. There's still a lot of that goes on, and a lot of the point scoring and the yay atheists. But we are seeing a slight shift. And I think possibly you could channel into another thing, one where the quality of the argument counts just as much as winning the argument. And in a place where you're surrounded by people who are going to force you to make the good arguments. And they're not going to clap you on because you could do a handstand and make fun of theists. They're going to clap or yell straw man or ad hominem. They're going to clap because you've made a good argument that's convinced them.
Or in some instances, you made a good argument that hasn't convinced them. I mean, I appreciate a conversation with someone where I've disagreed with them, but they've given me something to think about. They've made me doubt a couple of things. And even if they haven't convinced me there and then, I take it away. And it might be that once I've had time to think about it, I'm in the same position, but sometimes I go away and I have a think about something and I come back and go, okay, I based on what you said and what I've looked into since that, I can't actually hold that same position anymore. So I need to, look into this thing more or other options. But I don't think that the majority actually see things in that way. I think more are looking to play the game.
Because they get pleasure from the game. So if you could redirect that pleasure to, you haven't got a gold star because you've managed to make fun of somebody. You got a gold star because you made a good argument. And the gold star is what gives us pleasure, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you can redirect that in some way, then I think you could possibly change it. But then you have the problem of the bigger content creators. Nobody wants to go against the in-group. So the in-group, atheists, obviously, they have to start holding the others accountable and saying, well, look, you know what? You're making us look bad. The actual atheism itself is more important than just cheap scores, cheap wins. Because, yes, okay, there are people that deconvert out of religion because of the whole, you have no good reason to believe. But it's very few. And most people don't want to speak to the atheist who is just arrogant and aggressive and ranty. They just don't want to speak to him. So if you go in, you have a better chance of convincing people. If you can actually make good arguments against what they believe, there's still going to be assholes like Frank Turek. But we have them in the atheist community too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, most definitely do. And I suppose if there are enough people that, I mean, Frank Turek's the sort of person that if enough people actually ignored would go away. I'd say if it wasn't for the number of atheists responding to someone like Frank Turek, he would probably just disappear, because I reckon there's more atheists that respond to him than there are actually theists who think he's got a good idea.
I like making fun of him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cheap thrill at the end of the day. Every now and then you do need a dopamine fix. But yeah, I suppose if there was someone that created a site that had various ratings, sort of like a debate-based site, that actually rated the argument better. And when people were voting on the winner, they actually had to perhaps provide a justification for what they liked about the argument themselves. And then their voting was then rated as well by, say, like a moderation team, so that they could be sure that there was no bias going on. I think then you'd get to a point, I mean, it's a bit complex, obviously, but you'd get to a point where you'd have a fairer system. But then the issue would be getting people over there that weren't just looking for the cheap thrill of the meme bomb and the like. And you would still probably have people cheating the system, because it's still a digital system that would be open to abuse. And it would be a lot of work for the moderators to really maintain that level. But I can see a way it could happen, and I can see it being largely positive. And even if it was open to abuse, it would be better than it would be now. Because if they were then to do sort of like a monthly award of best argument, it would then have to be reviewed by the debate team, wouldn't it? And they'd have to put it out. So I think what we're saying, Ben, is hurry up and get your site up and running. Was that subtle enough promo for you? Catching up, sorry. Kimo, on the courtroom point that we made earlier, says even in courtroom, or maybe especially in a courtroom, the burden of proof or onus of evidence shifts all the time. Once a side makes a prima facie case, the burden rightly changes sides. Yeah, that's the whole point. It's basically the easiest way to think about it is like a game of badminton or tennis, or kicking a ball back and forth, throwing a ball back and forth with someone. Yes, the original burden might be on the person making a claim. Cool. But there's still, well, I don't accept that claim because, rather than, it's not evidence. You need scientific evidence. Well, do you know what? In a courtroom, do you always need scientific evidence? No, people are actually convicted on testimony alone. And testimony is one of the worst kinds of evidence. But with enough corroborating evidence, or testimony, should I say, it can be enough.
I mean, that's another good example of the sloganeering that we were talking about earlier, that allows people to have easy wins and get pleasure. That's not evidence. Therefore, your argument isn't good. Therefore, I've defeated your argument. I haven't had to do any work whatsoever. And then when the other side says, well, what is evidence? Scientific evidence. Okay.
But what is that?
Then you make you make the bar so high that it can never be jumped over. So you've built a wall. You've built the Great Wall of China around yourself to make sure that you are always in the middle of it and protected from any attack.
Yeah.
And there's another excellent one that T brings up in his thing. If you want to grab somebody into your game, and keep them trapped there, you can create a system where you condemn the other team in like really clear and simplistic ways. All theists are involved in child molestation. Like, how many times do you hear an atheist say, all theists hate gays? But that's not true. But you've created this kind of moral condemnation that then makes you feel smug and superior. Atheists use logic. We only believe things on evidence. We use rationality. We don't use feelings. We don't believe in imaginary things. So you create these slogans that trap you into the game and trap you into the team because you feel smug and superior to the other team. And if you take away those rules and those slogans, you take away that feeling of superiority. So people get trapped in that game. And that allows their beliefs to be manipulated even more.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it working. Brilliant agrees that it's fun to de-stress after work on Twitter.
I do it.
Yeah, I think we all do at times. I know there are. I mean, sometimes it can cause stress as well, but there are times when you're on there, and I think it's usually a bad atheist argument I'll focus on, but sometimes it's a really bad theist argument too. And I probably won't address it as much as I would say in general we ought to behave. I might be a little bit glib with it. I might make fun of it or be overly sarcastic rather than try and address it seriously first. And I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's necessarily right to ever get to the point where you're making fun. But I think there are certain times when you've tried enough, flippant comment as you leave, like fine. At the end of the day, you shouldn't go in like that straight away. But as much as I say you shouldn't do that, I'll admit I do at times, and especially to certain people. If I've had an interaction with them before, and I know that there's no point in actually having a serious conversation with them,
I'll just poke fun at them.
Yeah. Rule 364: as an atheist, you're forbidden to correct the in-crowd.
It's true,
though. We should come up with the ACA core directives. We should. In fact, Dave, we were talking about a follow-up stream earlier. That could be part of the fun.
It could, yeah. To get all the rules and yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Quote. So, give it time. Theists will come for agnostics too. But I forgot. Expert atheists assure that agnostics don't exist. Knowledge versus belief. Repeat until you're dead inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many bad quotes and slogans from a side. I mean, that I guess we're technically on. That claims to crave accuracy as much as ours, and truth and rationality and knowledge. I mean, I think part of the problem is we don't actually know what knowledge is. Most atheists, when they're talking about knowledge, they're talking about certainty or awareness, knowledge of, rather than knowledge in sort of any epistemic sense. So that, I think, is actually the first problem there, but I could be wrong. Probably going off topic there, though. Brilliant goes, Turek's the first name that came to mind, too. Yeah, I mean, if there's someone that's popular low-hanging fruit, it's Turek.
Yeah, Ray Comfort is dead now, so... Like, he's not dead as in, like, dead.
I was just going to say, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, no, nobody goes after him anymore.
No.
It's now Frank Turek. Because Frank Turek's got that slightly bigger audience, he's got that slightly bit more veneer of respectability. So that's who they go after.
It's probably because, the whole banana thing destroyed Ray, didn't it?
He's still going.
Yeah, but I think I haven't seen him pop up since that whole banana thing. That banana thing was like the last thing I saw anyone actually make fun of with him. It's almost like they were like, right, that's it. You've done it. You've got us to the point where there's not even any point making fun of you anymore. You just do it to yourself. Well done.
Yeah, sort of a flogging a dead horse type thing.
Icarus, hey. Yes, yeah, we're 2 days late. Sorry. And Jeff, good to see you here as well. Twitter is distress, not de-stress. Yeah, it definitely could be described that way. It depends how seriously you take it. But yes. There we go. And Turek was quoting Ray Comfort recently, apparently. Oh dear. Well, that says it all. Is Turek a bad parody of Ray Comfort? Maybe.
Or Ray Comfort straight man.
Sorry?
Like in a comedy duo, you've got the goof and the straight man.
Yeah.
Frank Turek is the straight man, Ray Comfort is the goof.
Dear me. I do find it kind of funny that both like Ray Comfort and Ken Ham sort of ended up in the States. It's almost like, the Antipodeans were a bit too rational. So they had to send them over to America.
Yeah, the only country religious enough now in the West for them that's still kind of white is America. And let's face it, look at the Christian nationalism thing going on. So they've always got an audience.
They do. But I mean, Australia and New Zealand less so, but Australia does still have some very strong religious themes going through it. So the fact that they're too much for Australia really says something. I think on the whole, religion in Australia is much like it is in the UK. People are just like, yeah, whatever. But you do have some very strong apparently Okay, I'm being corrected here by Ben. I'm giving those real Southerners far too much credit. There's been a rise of creationism in recent times. Oh dear. I mean, you could say the same about the UK. I mean, the only reason I ever heard of creationism was because I met a creationist in the UK, and I didn't believe that anyone actually believed this sort of thing. But it's such a small percentage of religious people especially when you're talking about a young Earth creationist. You might have a lot of old Earth creationists that accept all of science and just say it's God's plan, but God was the original spark, if you will. But when we're talking about creationism, we're generally talking about young Earth creationism. Just to be clear, so people know what we're saying. And yeah, it's one of those things that got me on the internet researching this stuff in the first place. And yeah, there are so many in America, like so many. And it's even then, it's only a small percentage, but it's a big enough thing to be a thing and affect schools and stuff like that, and laws, and, people being homeschooled because of it. Whereas that's less likely to happen in other places. But yeah, if you're talking about there being a rise in creationism in Australia, I mean, this isn't something I've looked into myself, but I'll have to look into it now so I don't make another error like I just did. Thank you for the correction, Ben. But you won't go on to say they probably just saw a bigger market in the UK, USA fiscally. Yeah, I think that's a lot of cases. I don't necessarily know with either Ken or Ray, but I do think that a lot of the people who are promoting certain conspiracy theories do so because of the benefit to them rather than actually believing the conspiracy. I can't guarantee that to be actually true, obviously, but it is a feeling that there is definitely so many of them have products to sell. It's never, oh yeah, this is the conspiracy, we should try and do something about it. It's, here's the conspiracy, I've got this product to sell. And that's what makes me doubt their integrity with it. I'd still think they were wrong if they didn't have the product to sell, but at least I feel that they were being honest. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. I could be completely off the mark there, but there you go. The last Prime Minister in Australia, Scott Morrison, was more Christian right-wing outwardly, noticeably so. Fair. Well, let's hope they sort that out. But I mean, you could even say the same thing to politics here. Some of our politicians, especially the Tories, can be very Christian and have very old traditionalist and somewhat bigoted ideas and ideals. And they don't really fit into the country anymore, but they're trying to get people behind them. And they might appeal to some older generations or some of the more misguided people that sit on Britain's first and all of that sort of stuff. So I can understand how it goes, but yeah. Jeff reckons that given some of my run-ins with flat earthers, there's definitely quite a number of them that are just making videos about it as a grift. Yeah, I think especially with flat earth, it has to be. Because, well, I mean, it's not like it's a core belief that really affects their entirety of their lives, like, say, creationism could. I do believe that there are some people who wholeheartedly believe creationism true and want you to believe it. I find it hard to believe that or at least the majority of well-informed people can seriously be a flat earther and are not like doing it for a grift. I mean, I like it when you do see some of the flat earthers turn around and go, shit, actually, this is wrong. The more I look into it, the more I realize it is wrong. But yeah, I suppose though, apart from content money, you know, super chats and all of that, what can a flat earther make out of it? It's, you know, I mean, the anti-vaxxer that sells their essential oils and alternative medicines and things like that, they've got something going on. They've got a product that they can sell. What can the flat earther actually sell other than their live streams and the like?
There's quite a bit of money in that. There's also like God, I can't remember his name. Mark something. Goofy guy in America. He did a speech over here. He was in Anglesey at some point. They create sort of conferences, and they charge people to come to the conference, and money is made out of that. Books are written, make money. Mark Sargent, that's it. Thank you, Jeff. He made quite a bit until it all started crumbling down around him. But there are a lot of people that get the super chats because they're doing something similar to what a lot of these atheist content creators are doing, making people feel as if they're the rational one.
Yeah. There is that sort of thing. I think it's why people get involved in conspiracy theories, and it's why you can get a lot of intelligent people buying into conspiracy theories as well. We all like the feeling that we have some special knowledge that other people don't. And paranoia is built into us. You know, the way we evolved, we are prone to paranoia and superstition and things like that. So there is always part of us that feels like there is some sort of conspiracy going on, and actually having one where we go, aha, and being the one that knows about it and can tell other people about it, and aha, I'm the knowledgeable one. It's a pretty good feeling. It is. And I can understand people getting caught up in that sort of thing for those reasons. Yeah, I don't know. It's just certain conspiracies, I don't even know how they keep going. Like, I can even understand, even though I completely disagree with it, I can understand how the anti-vax thing keeps going. I can't understand how the flat earth keeps going. Like, there should be no reason for that one. Wolf, good to see you, dude. Here we go. Ben says, flat earthers are deep into the psychological feedback loop of being on the exclusive and exceptional outside, knowing the obvious truth which everyone else misses, and that exclusive club is desired. That's basically what I was sort of describing with that. It's just the fact that I don't know how that one maintains itself. That is the bit that it's like, yeah, fair enough. I understand why people buy into conspiracies. It's just that one, that particular one. Like, no matter how much you look into it, it just doesn't make sense.
Here's an idea. How much do a lot of people love saying, "I told you so"?
Yeah, that's true.
Now, if they buy into the flat earth thing and eventually it turns out that the flat earth thing is true, they can turn around and say, "See, I fucking told you so." So that's another drive for things like that.
Yeah, I guess it's just not enough of a drive for me. But even then, I don't see how something like that can be true. You know, there isn't anything to support it being true. So how can this particular conspiracy maintain itself? That's my question. How can this particular, of all the conspiracies, which, you know, generally, I mean, not all conspiracies are false, but let's just say a large portion of conspiracies will be false. But even those that are, do have some sort of rationalization around them, some way that you can actually say, oh, no. Yeah, I can understand why you think this. You think, going back to like the anti-vax thing, if there's any parent who's ever had something that's happened to a child, things do happen. There are adverse reactions to vaccines. They're very rare, and generally they're very mild when they do happen, but they can happen. And that one parent can be so horrified by the experience, and you would be, that you spread it around and you spread it. Oh, don't get the vaccine, it's going to kill your kids. Because you've had this traumatic thing happen to you. And it is something that has actually happened. They're not thinking rationally, and rightly so, about the numbers and the statistics and about how much it actually protects you. There is nothing to support the flat earth. There was even a documentary by the flat earthers on Netflix where they went through and did the experiments and they kept on coming up as not working. And you can go out and do all the things that flat earthers would say would happen on a flat earth, and they don't happen. I don't know. It's
sunk cost fallacy.
Yes. And I completely get people who are in there guilty of the sunk cost fallacy. And again, that's back to my point about people doubling down when they start to doubt things. They are stuck in a sunk cost, and they don't want to admit that they were the ones that were wrong. They're too prideful, and therefore, they're going to try and continue to try and convince people so that they don't have to swallow their pride. Yeah, fair. So I guess they're playing their own kind of game as well. I know we're getting a little bit off topic of the gamification of atheism.
We'll bring it back around. I've got a couple of things to add. So,
but it brings it. It just shows that it's not necessarily just atheists making this sort of gamification. As I said before, we're atheists. We may not necessarily be always playing the atheist game. In fact, we try to avoid the atheist game, and we're not saying that other people don't play this game. And I just want to be clear on that, because I don't want everyone to think that we're just always attacking other atheists, because that's not our point. We're not even trying to attack other atheists. We're trying to raise an awareness among other atheists that these things are going on, and perhaps they need to reconsider certain things that they're certain of. And that's all I'm saying, right? So just to quickly run through a few more chat messages. Yes, Wolf, you are the only one with true clandestine knowledge. Andre says, I have to say the title is one of the best I have seen and instantly made me click this. Thank you very much. I think that was your title, wasn't it, Dave? But I made the image. Well, no, technically most of it was just Mario stuff, but... So, Andre, you want to ask, are we atheist or agnostic? We are atheist, and the way we use atheist is we believe gods don't exist. And, we just tend not to play the same atheist games. We don't think all theists are idiots, irrational, and all of that sort of thing. In fact, we try and correct a lot of atheists on their forms of logic, which don't seem to be quite as strong as they think it is. So, if you want a conversation with us, carrying back. So the difference is atheists actively say God doesn't exist. Not necessarily. So this is one of the things. You could get into the whole definition of atheism debate. So language is one of those things that evolves through common use. There are atheist and atheism are polysemous terms. Now, both Dave and I would say that an atheist is one that accepts the proposition of atheism. The proposition of atheism is that gods do not exist. And Therefore, we would say that, all you have to do is accept it. You don't necessarily have to claim it's definitely true that no gods exist, just that you believe or you accept or that you think it is most likely, most probable that gods do not exist. And that is the position that we personally hold. But you will find it quite common, especially on the internet these days, and in fact, not much anywhere else, for atheists to say that it's just any form of not believing in gods. So they will conflate all forms of non-theist with atheist. So the agnostic in this sort of sense, so again, agnosticism is a polysemous term, but generally when you're talking about a proposition, if you're agnostic towards a proposition, it means you suspend judgment in that proposition. So you don't believe it true, but you don't believe it false. So there can be lots of different reasons why you're suspending judgment. Even the agnostic does have a burden of proof. They have the burden of proof of why they're not convinced either way, basically. They have to... The burden of proof is one of those things that we've talked about a number of times. It's often misused, but essentially it's just justify your position. It's not prove your position is definitely true. It's just say why you think what you think. And everyone has that who's active in a conversation, at least to themselves anyway, if not to others. So hopefully those explanations, I know it was quite quick. We do have more videos on this and the different definitions of atheism that people use, our preferred definitions. We've got lots of articles, but that's essentially a quick rundown of it. So just carrying on through it. Cool. I think we're pretty much back on track. What? How about that new Pokemon game? No clue. But if you want to buy me a copy, I'll give it a go. So, Dave, bring us back onto topic.
Okay, so what we were just talking about is condemning the other side in a way that makes you feel smug and superior. Now, you think about a lot of atheist content, and especially a lot of the more popular atheist content, that's what it is. It's mocking the religious people. And what is one of the most common things in atheism? The ridiculous deserve to be ridiculed.
Yeah, which we disagree with.
Oh, yeah. But that's a popular slogan, as I was saying earlier about slogans bringing people in and trapping them in. And if you're going to trap somebody into your belief system, make them feel smug and superior. And you think about Matt Dillahunty with the whole hanging up on collars thing that makes people, he showed that theist, So they get caught up in that. Okay, and there's another idea that he brings up, which is sort of linked to this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the idea of porn. Not porn as in, Pornhub or anything.
Food porn and stuff like that.
Yeah, food porn and stuff like that. And I've written down what he said because there's no way I can remember this. Porn is when you use a representation of X for immediate gratification, freed from the typical attending costs and consequences of actually engaging with X. So food porn, you look at the pictures and you get the gratification of that really tasty food, that kind of thing. Now, I propose here that in some sense, atheism has gamified that idea, or not atheism itself, but the popular atheist community has done that with logic and reason, and rationality. I'm logical. I'm an atheist. So they have the ability to talk about how logical they are without actually having the cost of doing a course on logic, reading a book on logic, studying logic.
Mm.
And how many of them get it very wrong? You know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Like a simple example is the clam is not a valid argument. Well, in logic, yes, it very much is a valid argument. It might not be a particularly good argument, might not be a sound argument, but it is valid. And if you knew about logic, you would know that thing.
You could even turn the kalam, if you clarify certain points, into a sound argument by saying what you mean by certain bits, and all of a sudden it can be a sound argument from a naturalistic perspective. You know, you can make it that just with a bit of discussion around all the points. So, yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's
but
right.
You know it happens constantly anyway.
Well, the porn thing kind of ties back to the making you feel smug and superior. Well, I am smug and superior. I am a critical thinker and a skeptic. Doesn't matter that you don't do all the things that a skeptic does, because how many times do we see atheists not doubting a slogan like, you can't prove a negative?
Mm.
So they're not having the attending costs of being a skeptic or of being rational or of being of logic. So this gamified version of atheism gives them that pleasure, gives them that feeling of being the logical one.
So again, this gamification describes the aesthetic skepticism that we've discussed in the past, and it explains the aesthetic skepticism that we were talking about in the past as well. I mean, this is brilliant, actually, when you think about it, because it has covered off everything.
Yeah, it basically wraps it all up into a nice, neat package that, like, we've had all these ideas before, but never been able to round them up into a coherent sort of framework. And this kind of puts it all into that framework. So if you were really concerned with skepticism and with logic and all that, you would be open to the nuances of it.
Yes.
Yeah, and you would be open to being wrong. But how many of those people, those self-proclaimed skeptics, are open to nuance? Well, they're not, because you can see that just in the atheist or theist.
Mm.
And how many try to make arguments like it's the law of excluded middle? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that law of excluded middle ignores the nuance of language and ignores the nuance of the logic of what's being said. So, hang on one second. Yeah. So those interested in these kind of games and in this kind of pornified version of things, they just want simple beliefs and they want to be easily outraged, because that's one of the things. If you think about a lot of content online, a lot of it is moral outrage.
Mm.
Yeah. It's not the actual morality. They're not interested in the morality. They're interested in that moral outrage. And you see some of that going on in the atheist community as well. They'll be morally outraged by the actions of people, but that's about as far as it goes. They don't really care about anything else. And if they really cared about that, they would care about the nuances of atheism and the deeper discussions within atheism, but they don't. They bring it back to just wanting to win arguments.
Yeah, and you know, again, the simplification of what evidence is, and there's only one kind of evidence that actually they'll accept. And again, all of these things get simplified. So no, that's not evidence. That's not evidence. That's not evidence. That's not evidence. Give me some real evidence. And so, yeah, every stage of the way there is the oversimplification going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's another way to keep people trapped in this game and this belief system, is to give them pleasure by giving them these simplistic slogans and these simplistic ideas without any nuance that allows them to be outraged. And that outrage triggers a sense of pleasure in them. So they won't care about the nuance because they're getting that dopamine fix for being outraged.
Mm.
And how often do you see people in the atheist community, even when you don't I was having a discussion the other night where somebody posted a poll. Oh, last week, somebody posted a poll. Is belief in God misinformed, a lie? The typical kind of stuff. And I said, well, it's none of them unless you can offer pretty undoubtable proof that God doesn't exist, because they could just be mistaken. They're not lying, they're not cheating, they're not doing anything like that. And somebody jumped in and did the whole burden of proof is on the theists. And then when I corrected them on that, they said, well, all I'm saying is that I don't believe in God. And that's all I've said since the beginning. But his first post was telling me I needed to learn about fallacies and logic. So he moved the actual point of discussion to somewhere where he could keep that outrage and where he could move it into a place where he could get that dopamine fix from winning the argument. And that's what a lot of these arguments are intended to do, to create this outrage from atheists. And what's one of the things that happens when you're outraged? You're less likely to listen to the other side and to listen to nuance.
Yeah. And actually, something you're saying is that the keep on winning thing, you notice this a lot as well. People actually just try and win the last message. They don't hold a consistent and coherent conversation. So you imagine on Twitter, they just actually find a way to argue against your last statement in a way that makes them feel superior, like they've won that one, and then they'll say something to that one and that one and that one, and they may well, if you actually read it down, have contradicted themselves and what they say tons of times. And if you try and address that, they say, no, you're taking it out of context. No, it's just the context of the conversation.
Well, a perfect example is when you say, well, in philosophy, atheists described as so-and-so. Well, they're not the ones that get to tell me how to use language. You don't get to tell somebody else how they define themselves.
And you go, and okay, then, that's fine. We agree with that.
And then I define atheism as a belief God doesn't. Well, that's not what atheism means. This is what atheism means, and only this. You don't get to define what words mean. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So who does?
Yeah, that's it. They'll just keep contradicting themselves because they're getting that pleasure from being outraged, and they're going to get that pleasure from winning the argument. So atheism has been gamified in that kind of way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the more we have this discussion, I know I keep saying it, but it just wraps up all of our ideas and discussions and things that we've been writing about and talking about for the last few years about problems within the atheist community into a nice little bubble of like a real explanation for all of them. And it's like where we've discussed things like, the avoidance of the burden of proof. And we can understand why someone might want to, avoid the burden of proof. But actually just saying, it's God mode in a game, it's a much easier way and debatably more accurate way to actually consider it. And there's a lot that you can draw from that, because you've got this whole idea of the gamification process that goes on. But I suppose, I don't know if this is coming in too early, Dave. I don't know how much more you want to discuss on this, but would you say
there is more, but I'm thinking we should probably wrap it up a bit. Now we got a lot out. There's a couple more things I want to say, but yeah.
Okay, well, I was just thinking, would you say that gamification is always a bad thing?
No. Not always, because that's quite a broad statement.
Yes, of course.
That's quite a broad statement. But in debate and discussion, I think it can be a bad thing because it loses nuance and it takes away the importance of certain discussions. Like if we're going to talk about religion and how it's harmful to society and stuff, there's a lot of nuance in there. I mean, how much harm are Janists doing? But under the umbrella that many atheists do in this gamified version of atheism, the Janists are just as bad as the Christian nationalists. In this gamified version of atheism, Randall Rouser is just as bad of an apologist as a preacher. Well, no, worse. He's just as bad as a preacher that calls for the death of homosexuals. Do you see what I mean?
Well, I mean, this comes back to, again, your oversimplification point, because it comes back round to, all religion basically being Christianity, and all Christianity being the fundamentalist kind.
Yeah.
So
you simplify those morals and you simplify those claims to make everybody the bad guy. And everybody looks like this one particular thing, because if you can focus on this one particular guy and make him into everybody, you don't have to worry about nuance.
Yeah, and we've seen it happen. I mean, I've spoken before about the person who proved Christianity false because it's not literally true. Okay, but most Christians aren't literalists. Doesn't matter. I've proved it false. You've proved literalism false. I completely agree. You probably account for, 2% of Christians? So, well done.
Yeah. and here's the thing. There is harms being caused by religion, and Christian nationalism in America is a problem.
Definitely.
But you're not going to be able to combat that properly by just turning atheism into a debate game.
Yeah.
Because how many people are you going out into the streets? Most of those Christian nationalists aren't on Twitter chasing likes. They're out there getting people into positions of power so that they can actually do some damage. You're not doing any damage on Twitter with your 1,000 followers and your 200 likes on each post. Your 1 million subscribers on YouTube who are all caught in filter bubbles and echo chambers. That's not really going to do very much. You need the nuanced arguments. You need passion. Arguing that I won that debate isn't passion. That's self-gratification.
Most definitely. Shall I quickly address the few conversations that we've got going on in the chat as we go? The Bible says, in my conversations with religious people, it usually turns out intuition and personal experience are the most powerful convincers. Most of the call-in shows seem totally unreceptive of those. And I think this is true, though. I mean, personal experience is going to be the most convincing thing to the individual that experiences it. The experience could be wrong, and no one denies that. But you think about a mundane experience that you've had. You see your friend drive past in a red car. You think that it happened, right? And the same thing can be someone that feels that they've had a religious experience. It's really real. It's really strong. It's really powerful. And as for the intuition point that Bible brings up there, it's one of those things that's hardwired into us. It's part of our evolution to assign agency, to be paranoid and superstitious. It's a survival trait. And that is why we are prone to believe things, and we are prone to think that something did it, So whether there is or isn't anything, we have an evolutionary explanation for why we are prone to these beliefs regardless. And yeah, most of the call-in shows might be unreceptive to those. I suppose it's not a really good convincing point, because my personal experience generally won't convince you, especially if it's not a mundane experience. If I did tell you that, I just saw my mate drive by in a red car, you might go, well, okay, then not think anything of it. But if I was making a bigger claim, okay, you'd probably find it particularly unconvincing. I just saw 3 aliens walk by, man. You'd probably go, Joe, have you had mushrooms again? Not for a few years, but, flashbacks, man. But yes. I can understand why they might be unreceptive to that sort of thing, though, because there's nothing they can really discuss on it. I've had this experience. Okay, how does that help anyone else? And sometimes that conversation goes on, well, you have to try and believe, man, and go through the process and then reach out to God and he'll come to you. Okay, and what about all the people that have done that and it's not happened? But you're right. I mean, personal experience and intuition are going to be the most convincing things for people in general. Ben says, Oppie used Kalam and PSI in debate with Andrew Locke towards a naturalistic necessary being position. These kinds of syllogisms around cosmology are often just frameworks into which definitions are pushed. And that's great. You know, this is something that we've said before. The Kalam is basically just an opening statement in a court case for those that like the whole courtroom analogy and the burden of proof thing. It's basically saying that, you know, these are the reasons why there was something. There was a necessary being. A necessary being doesn't necessarily mean a physical being. It could just mean that the dense state of energy in the universe, you know? And it can be. I mean, there is nothing wrong with using these arguments. They're just the start. And as you say, you then push your definitions into it. You then talk about what every bit means to you. You then explain it a bit better. I mean, a simple syllogism like that isn't really going to convince many people, right? Without the additional arguments that go with it. You know, all the people that go, well, it doesn't specify which God. Well, no, that's why you talk to the person, and that's the rest of the conversation that you have with them. And then you can turn around and say, well, actually, I accept the argument, but I think it's this. So how are we going to tell the difference between it being A or B? What's the better explanation? What has more explanatory power? Well, then we go on to other arguments and other syllogisms and things like that that then might open up different avenues. Anyway, I suppose it's a different game, though, when you're doing that, isn't it, Dave? Ben then goes on to say, when you see these arguments from the perspective of being frameworks into which concepts and definitions are placed to build propositions, they become tools of varying quality. Very right. Wolf says, people are people. Being atheist doesn't make a person rational by default. No, you're absolutely right. But this is one of the games that go on. One of the rules that you often hear. Being an atheist makes you smart and rational and a skeptic and all those really good things. And the theist by default is the opposite. And that's one of these things that's often touted, these memes. And, you know, it's like how people go on about how atheists are more intelligent than theists on average, but it's literally on average a couple of IQ points, and it's a limited data set as well, but it's only a couple of IQ points, and they're only both in the particular data set are both slightly above average. I think the theist was like at 102 and the atheist was at 105. You know, and really, those points, they're nothing to really brag about. So,
not unless you're me and have 142. It's all nonsense. My IQ's high enough to know that it's all nonsense.
Yeah. Andre says, also, another reason I tend to disregard religious subjects is because it's human nature to search for reason. Something bad happened. I have bad luck. I'm having bad karma. I'm being punished. Exactly right. This ties back into the what I was saying before about us being prone to those superstitions and things. It goes on to say, being punished for my sins, but if you think about it, religion is just a crutch. I am being forgiven for my wrongdoings because I'm putting my faith in a higher being, a being that may as well be a human creation. And it's true. And it can be a useful tool for some people as well. There are some people that have used religion to get themselves out of shit. You know, I'm not saying religion is always bad, and I'm not saying a crutch is always bad. I mean, you break your leg, you're better off having crutches than not, right? And if for a time you need a bit of religion to get you through something, again, fine, right? As long as you're not hurting anyone, I really don't care what you believe. And I think that's part of the problem that happens with the oversimplification in the atheist community as well. Like Dave was mentioning earlier, when you suddenly regard all religion, all theists, all Christians, whatever, as the same big bad, you've got a problem. Because actually, the majority of religious people are good people that want to do the right thing and sometimes go against their religion because their internal compass goes against what it says in their book, or they find some justification for what that meant actually was supposed to mean. And they do the right thing. And many of them would be on side with non-theists, atheists, agnostics, ignostics, so on and so forth, in the fight against the Christian nationalists and ISIS and everything like that. So this oversimplification, this gamification, is doing harm in that regard as well, because we are pushing theists that would otherwise be on our side away from us and perhaps towards the side that we want to fight against. Wolf says, people gamify life in general. It's not just an atheist phenomenon. No, that's right. I mean, I think it happens with everything, and I think actually it can make life more interesting. I think that there are some positives that come from it. I mean, there was an app that came out that gamified workouts. You had to work out in real life, and it powered up your character in the game. The more you worked out, the more powerful your character got in the game. Fantastic. I loved the idea of that. And I think that sort of thing can be positive. And I think that there could even be positive ways to gamify these sorts of conversations, but they would have to be heavily moderated and with a distinct rule set that wasn't defined by the people that wanted to win. It was defined by an objective third party. So that in itself is going to be difficult. And then it would also have to be as locked down and not open to abuse as possible. So there you go. And Ben says the same thing. You know, these are societal and zeitgeist behaviors embedded in technological developments. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you actually think about it. You think about the structure within an army, for example, or any company. The harder you work, the better your pay gets, the better your rank within the company gets. You become a team leader, you become a manager, you become a director, so on and so forth. You know, you start as a private, you know, you end up as, I don't know, admiral, general, whatever.
YouTube does it. Get so many likes, you get a community tab, get so many more subscribers, you can get to monetization. Don't break our rules or you lose your monetization. Forces you to sort of make popular content and follow the trends and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, really good point. You can even think about it in actual games, like real games, like chess and stuff like that. You've got rankings. You know, they're all ranked in the world. You've got leagues and everything in football and all the other sorts. And yeah, so, wow. Apparently we're 2 away from 1,000. That's amazing. I mean, I never thought we'd actually get over 100. Like, honestly, I'm glad that we did, but I just thought that who wants to sit here and listen to two old guys chat about philosophical nonsense?
It's not nonsense. It's bollocks.
It's true. That's true. This is kind of off topic to the thing, but we started hearing about more people having addictions to drugs and depression and self-harm once the Western world was becoming less and less religious. I think that you might just be having more of an awareness to it as technology improves and diagnosis improves as well. I mean, for example, certain things within neurodivergence, there were people talking about ADHD in the 1700s, but only recently has it become really like more researched. And because it's more researched and people are more aware of it and the effects that it has, you're getting more diagnoses. You find the same thing with ASD. someone being on the autistic spectrum. And the same thing with depression as well. I think more people were told to just suck it up and deal with it and live in their own thing. And people had to be more private with their addictions and their depression. Whereas now it's a bit more, no, we will help you. We will help you out of this. We don't want you to suffer alone. And because we are now in a more caring world, there are more people coming forward and saying that they're struggling. There are still tons of people that suffer in silence. So I don't think that you're necessarily saying and you're saying you're hearing about more people having drugs and depression. That doesn't mean that people didn't have the addictions before. And also you're talking about a time when there's more technology. Before social media, you didn't really hear much about any of it at all. Before social media, a lot of people had never even heard of creationism. It doesn't mean that there's suddenly more creationists than there were. It's just you hear about it more. So whether you hear about something more or whether there's more diagnosis of something or not isn't the same as there actually being an objective increase in these things with less religion. As Kimmo says, there's more access to information now. People have always had these sorts of problems in life. Yeah, I agree. Probably a little bit more succinctly than I put it. I am prone to prattle on, though. Dave, is there anything that you wanted to address, or are there things that you've got left for our part 2 in the future?
There's stuff left for the part 2, but something I just want to kind of end on is one of the things that the skeptic community is about breaking sort of religious and, breaking up cults. And that's sort of one of the ideas. Now, as we've seen, gamification, or another thing is, we shouldn't manipulate people's beliefs, that kind of thing. So as we've looked at, or as we've seen, the gamification is used to manipulate people's beliefs and used to trap them into an echo chamber and cult-like structure. So the people promoting this gamification are guilty of manipulating people's beliefs. And they're usually grabbing people out of religion who are now wanting another structure because that's what they're used to. And they're taking advantage of those religious people. And as atheists, we not only should we be wanting the better skepticism and the better nuance and the good discussions, because that's what we should be about as skeptics. We should be going against these people who are using this gamified system to trap people into these beliefs and to manipulate these beliefs. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's no difference between atheists using this system to manipulate people's beliefs and a religion manipulating people's beliefs. So we should be more outraged by these things happening.
Most definitely. And I think there's also the fact that we should have more acknowledgement of the fact that there are certain things that religion does provide people, that whether you think you want it or not, that, a lot of people do need the community aspect. A lot of people do need the death rituals and the support and other things like that you do get from religion, and not having it, they look for it. And that's why people are open to having their beliefs twisted and manipulated by these people who are looking to do it. And if we actually had something else that we could provide them, if we actually had a proper atheist community that was looking to be a proper community rather than all the weak things that seem to come up, the opportunity for these people's beliefs being manipulated would be minimized as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things I really got to give somebody like Godless Granny credit for, is that she is attempting to community build. Not just connect people to each other, but actually build a community where there's support and there's sort of progression in actually caring about how good the arguments are, not just winning the arguments.
Yeah, most definitely. I haven't actually checked her out in a while, but all of you who haven't checked out Godless Granny, she's definitely worth checking out. And obviously, we've both been on a stream or two of hers as well. So if you want a familiar face, we're there. But she's got lots of other stuff going on that's generally quite good. And she's also someone who is up for a good conversation and open to the critique. And if you do say, well, I didn't really agree with that, but she goes, well, why? And she goes, oh, okay. Yeah. And she'll think on it. And it's nice to see that from someone, because generally you say that sort of thing to someone in the atheist community, and well, everything that happens that like we've described throughout the rest of the night.
Yeah. It's similar to stuff we discussed earlier on, where you know you're caught in a game, and your beliefs are being manipulated. If you're being taught to believe one particular simple thing only, and to never question it.
Yeah, most definitely. So, Dave, on that, do you have any final thoughts or anything else for tonight? And
Nope.
No? Okay. Well, we will definitely come back with a follow-up to this in the future. There have been a couple of suggestions in the chat and a couple of things Dave and I have already talked about that we'd like to address. But we have kept you here for almost 2 hours already. And I know we've been trying our best to keep our streams shorter, and we've kind of failed tonight. But that's okay. It's mainly my fault.
There was a lot of...
I'll try not to let myself go off on too many tangents.
One thing I will add is go watch C.T. Nguyen's actual lectures and presentations. One is the gamification of social media, or the gamification of discourse on social media or something, and the clarity, the seduction of clarity.
I'm just trying to pull up those and drop them in the chat for people to check, actually. I'm just loading WhatsApp on my computer, but it's deciding that it's going to go real slow. So whilst I'm doing that, I'm actually going to answer a couple of questions in the chat. And Andre says, do you do streams daily? I would love to do streams daily, but no, I have a job and a family that take up pretty much all of my time. We try to stream twice a week, and we will do it on a Tuesday and a Thursday at 9 p.m. GMT. That's 4 p.m. Eastern. I know sometimes time zone changes, like our clocks go back and forward at slightly different times. So that can change things a little bit, but generally you can find us at that. If you tell me your time zone, I can try and work it out, but if you just remember 9 p.m. GMT, Tuesday, Thursday, that tends to be when we stream. We also put out other videos on a slightly more regular basis. We do some shorts, and we do some sort of 10-minute videos and 30-minute videos on some of these topics, because I mean, not everybody has as much time to, or all the time that you can to listen to a live stream like this. It can be, you want some smaller, more concise information. So we do that sort of stuff as well. But yes, I think that, I mean, one of the benefits of a live stream like this is people can actually ask the questions to us live and get a response and have a discussion about the responses. And I think there's a lot of benefit that you can get from joining in the live streams. It's just one of those things that they do sometimes take a bit longer, and you don't necessarily get a specific bit of it. You sometimes I want A, B, C, and we do A, and A takes us 15-20 minutes because of various questions that come in. So hits and misses. I mean, I love doing the live streams. I love the interaction that we get from people, and I would happily stream every day if it wasn't for, work and family and all of that stuff. I mean, it would be amazing to do. Although, to be honest, I don't know if we could have enough content to do that. We're very niche, so there's quite a restrictive...
Not smart enough for that.
Well, it's YouTube. You don't have to be that smart, Dave.
Yeah, I suppose we could just start mocking religious people in a way that makes us smug and superior.
Yes, indeed. Although, I mean, as much as we joke about doing that, it's not something that Dave and I would necessarily ever do. But yeah, actually, your next comment about atheist plays Doom. Dave and I once did something called Plato's Gaming Cave, where we played a game of Civilizations and had a chat. But yeah, I suppose we could do more content like that, Dave. You know, we wouldn't always have to have the sci-fi discussions. We could do the other stuff. So that first one is the gamification of social media, and that is the other one. I finally got it into the chat. I managed to just carry on chatting long enough to hooray.
Yeah, I mean, it's his research, so he puts it way better than I ever could. I just found ways to link it to the actual atheist community and the way it's going.
Yes, and I think it was a brilliant way to do it, and I think actually it really locks down how we've been discussing about things in the past, and it just makes everything make that little bit more sense and ties it all together into one sort of thing. And
the framework,
yeah. And it may not be that for everyone. It may not actually be that that they're playing into it. They might inadvertently be playing to the rules rather than actively seeking likes and things like that. But
that's the best way to trap people into a belief system, is to not let them know that they're playing the game, but to manipulate them in such a way that they are doing it, and they're like doing your bidding without them realizing. There's a whole Foucauldian thing that goes on there about the construction of like personalities and all that kind of stuff. So
okay. Yeah, most definitely.
We've discussed Foucault's power in the past, and it's a similar kind of idea to how Foucault discusses power.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. It does. I mean, it ties into a lot of the future dystopia type things as well, doesn't it? It's all these
Very
people
much
locked in a society where they're told they're happy and they don't realize they're not. And everything else. But yeah, awesome, Dave. Thank you so much for tonight. And obviously, thank you everybody who's actually joined in tonight. There's been a lot of fantastic comments in the chat. I'm sorry if I've missed any. And Ben, just to say what you're saying here, you're still a fan of re-envisioning gamification for positive ends. I think there's power embracing the psychological impulses to raise the minimum bar for the masses. Completely agree with you. It's like I was saying, I can envision a way that this conversation could be gamified in such a way that would have a positive use. And it's like there are those apps, like I mentioned, like that gamify your workouts. And there are plenty of there's ways to learn coding you code by playing a game, and you have to write little bits of code to pass the levels. What a fantastic way to learn code. I wish that had been around when I was younger. And so there's definite positives to gamification. I just don't think that in social media in general, atheism can be gamified in a positive way. You'd have to have a brand new site, some sort of site where people would go to debate things with some objective team. I mean, Ben, maybe you can come up with something that people could do. I mean, let me know if you have any ideas on that. But yeah, it'd be absolutely fantastic if that sort of thing could be gamified. Awesome. Well, as I said, thank you everybody, and thank you anybody who's watching the rerun and has actually made it to the end as well. Well done. Dave, just before we go though, actually, there is something. I was wondering if you had seen anything recently that on the old YouTube that's worth anyone else checking out.
Just those C-Team game videos.
Yeah, they're brilliant actually. So I've dropped those into the chat, and I will throw them up at the end screen as well. So thank you everybody. Hope you've had a fantastic time. We will see you next week. Have a good night.